G'day. I'm going to go over the popular rugby union and how to read this spreadsheet. So, what you have is a spreadsheet, and I'm just going to go over each part. So, this is what the league is called. This is the season you're in. It's color coordinated. So, season 80 will be in purple again. I forget what the other colors are for each year. This is the map. So you see Athens, you see Log Harbor, you see Stornoway City. If you can't find your city on the map, it's probably because it's a neighborhood in the city. Feel free to ask, and I'll give you more details. There's another league in on the continent called the Continental Rugby League, and as a result, there are players who can transfer to the PRU. Right now, it's a limited list, but this may grow or not over the next few seasons. We just had the Grand Championship. It's actually being posted, so eventually there'll be a link here, which you will see when you go to Season 70, because eventually this will be updated with Season 71 information. Prior to the season, you had the off-season transactions, then you had the season transactions, and now you're having the postseason transactions. The playoffs, you can click on these to sort of see how they went. Injury suspensions that happened after the game or during the game, and that may influence the next game. And so, for instance, as you see here, Vassetti was injured for Union, and as a result, he wasn't able to play in both the finals as well as the Grand Championship because he was injured for a long period of time. These are the standings: teams that made the playoffs, teams that didn't. This was kind of interesting because you had a three-way tie. And in the West, it was actually interesting because Rocky Edge and Stanislav were very close. Rocky Edge won the last game of the season. They make the playoffs. Stanislav was out. And these are sort of the standings as they were in each of the weeks and the injuries. This right here was just during the off season. Two teams wanted to play each other, see how they would do, and so this is the result of that. Here you see the teams as well as those that are active, meaning they're not a bot, are starred and in italics. Okay. This is the skill level of the team overall. Do realize there's other things that influence it besides just the players and how good they are. I'll explain that when I look at Athens in a little more detail. Okay, and of course, this number, if it's increased from the previous season, which was in this case 2052, I've changed the numbering from because this season 70 should have been 2053, but I changed the numbering. Um, so their overall skill level increased, and there's other teams that decreased since last season. And then finally, you had the preseason rankings. They're somewhat accurate. So for instance, they said, "Hey, Union's gonna win," and they were right. But they also said primarily that Athens was going to win, except for one paper, and they were wrong. Okay, they said that Port would, depending on which paper, but either Sacradicity or Port would come last, but primarily Sacradicity, and with that, they were wrong. And so, while it's not right all the time, it will give you an indication of how a team's going to basically do. Again, Asado, most papers said that would come last, and they actually came. And again, um, how this works is I basically simulate an entire season, and this is what, so it basically number crunches it, and this is what you get. Rules. These change from season to season, so and sometimes it's very slight, so it's best to look over these prior to the preseason. Um, uh, each team plays all other teams in their division once. Again, right now we only have two divisions. That's changed. In the past, we had tier one and tier two divisions, so it changes from time to time. How much money a team gets changes, but currently, right now, this is where we're at. I don't really have plans to change anything here too much in the next season or two, but I'm also influenced by those who run teams, so if there's sort of a consensus, hey, we want something, I may change something as a result of that. This tells you about academies and what types of players they draft. A player must be sold for their value. So if a player is worth 300,000, you can't sell it for 270,000. You have to sell it for 300,000 euros. Okay? And how does that work? Well, it's really simple. If a player is age 30, they're aged because there's two things. If you look at Athens, there's two things that make up the value of a player: their age and their skill. So if a player is 30, now Athens doesn't have any players that are 30, but Isato does. So you'll notice that the age value is 0. For a level 32 player, the age value is negative 100. So every year they're older than age 30, they lose $50,000 in value. Every year they're younger than 30, they add 50,000 in value. Okay. In addition to that, there's also a value for their skill. So if they're level 50, so let's go back to Sato again because they may actually have a 50 kicking around. Okay, they have a 51. And so that skill value is 10,000. So if it was 50, and let me just change this here to show you, it's 0, 51 it's 10, 52 it's 20, all the way up to 80. Once they reach 80, let me go to Athens because I know. Then, so 300, if this was 81, it would be 400. We have a 82 level player here, it's 500. And so once they hit 80, every skill level above 80 goes up by 100,000, no longer 10,000 like it did between 50 and 80. And if you have further questions about that, feel free to ask me. Players that announce their intention to retire cannot be traded. Free agents can be purchased at any time. However, you only get them during the off season or preseason. During a season, rosters are locked. You can trade with bot teams. Now, you may want to trade with each other, but as players learn how to run the simulation, really your only option will be to farm off of bot teams because that's the only way you can really improve your company. And again, remember, you are running a company that deals with rugby, so your job is to make as much money as possible. A couple other things you want to read here because the amount of players you can trade changes from year to year. So in the past, you could train and trade a lot of players, and then that's changed recently back to the way it used to be when it first started, actually, 70 seasons ago. For training, couple things. There was individual training, so you'll see where, for instance, Athens trained two players individually. It'll say specific skill points. So if you're looking on those videos on Lincoln Teaches about Athens roster or Lenita's roster or Magna Carta's roster, you'll see where they might have like a 65 in stamina. That's a specific skill. They might have 71 in speed. So that's another specific skill. There used to be power training last season. That's been gotten rid of. So you'll see here where Athens power trained, but power training is no longer allowed. Since that point in time, we've come up with team training, and so team training has taken over. And again, I'm from time to time changing the rules so that once students figure out how to run their company, they have to start figuring out something else so that the simulation doesn't become repetitive and predictable. Okay, you're constantly having to think, how can I improve my company? And what worked in the past won't necessarily work in the future, just like in the real world. It also talks about academies here, so you'll want to read about that. And if you have any questions, let me know. So how do you read your team page? Well, again, this is the team. This is whoever the owners are. This is the amount of championships, which you can see the team I run is not necessarily that good, which is why I acquired them. Basically, what happens is anytime I win a championship, the other owners decide which team I get next. So now in this case, I didn't want the worst team. I ended up with the second worst team, but anyways. Team attributes, they should all be 75, although you can monkey around with them. I actually am probably going to change this because I keep losing to Magna Carta, and I think it's because of this. So, among other things. This is their full name. This is their location, so they're located in Athens, which, of course, as I said, is in the middle of the country. Founded 1983 or season 0, because we used to go by years, but just recently we've changed it to season 70. So prior to season 70 was actually the year 2052, in case you're wondering, and you can see that here. Okay. The league is Popular Rugby Union. The venue is Castle Stadium. This team has an academy level of 2, which again, as I said, you can look at the training to see how to acquire, but it does cost you a lot of money. Total net worth, that is a good, although not necessarily the only indicator you should look at when choosing a company or figuring out how good your company is. Total net worth takes into account total player value, cash, and academy. That's it. However, you have to realize, let's say, for instance, when you're looking at Lock Harbor North, okay, they have a number of players who could retire. And so, for instance, this past season, they had this player who retired. So that's 550,000 they just lost. So do make sure when you're looking at net worth, you're also taking into account threats. If they have a whole ton of players that may retire in the upcoming season, that might drop the net worth significantly. And if you look at teams like Asado, that's happened to them numerous seasons. When you're looking at a player, again, they are an asset. Okay, an asset is an item that you own. Okay, and so this player, Durand, he's a prop. He's age 23, which means 50,000 per year. He's younger than 30, which is 7 years. So 7 times 50 is 350,000, which gives him an age value of 350,000 to the positive. In addition to that, he has an overall skill of 90, which again at level 80, their overall skill level is 300,000, and then from there it increases by 100,000 each level above level 80, which is why his skill value is 1.3 million. You put those both together and it's 1.65 million total value. What do the colors mean? Well, if they're green, their age is 18 to 43. If they are, I don't think we've ever had a player who's age 43, if I'm not mistaken. I think we had one that was 41 or 42, but I can't remember. So, and that's over the 70 seasons. Okay. Brown means this is a player that the team has traded. So if you look here, they traded him to Stornoway during the season. He's on their roster until the end of season 70, and then from there he will go to Stornoway. This is what the player's skill, it says predicted, but it is what it's going to be next season based on training. In this case, this team trained everybody, and then they also, in addition to that, individually train these players and power train these players. Red means the player is retiring at the end of the season. Red means the players here could have retired, but they chose not to. They said, hey, we'll stick around for another season. These players, they're under age 18, so they were yellow. However, they were traded. And these players also are incoming, meaning they were traded for. Okay, these were draftees, as you can see here. And again, this is your retiree for this team. And these are players that were individually trained. These were players that were power trained. Here you can see the history of all the transactions to a point. Prior to the 2034, it was on a different database, so it's kind of difficult for me to manually enter that from those previous databases, although I'm slowly doing that team by team. But here you can sort of see how the team's done. So in season 70, which is this past season, they were in the Premier East, ended up second of 8 teams, and lost in the division finals. And you can actually see that they ended up second. They won their semifinal and then lost in the divisional finals. Okay. They made $1 million because they made the playoffs, but didn't win the grand championship. Okay. And then these are some of the trades. This is who they drafted. This is the retirees. This is their team training, so on and so forth. And you can see, and as you can see, there's different things for different seasons as rules have changed. A couple other things you should note. Please remember that once a player is older than 31, they can no longer be traded to a bot team. So once they turn 30, it starts coloring in orange just to remind you that, hey, this player is getting to the point where they can no longer be traded to a bot team. And more importantly, they're getting to a point where once they turn 34, they can retire. And that's totally random. Okay. Whether they retire at 34, 35, 36. And again, I can go into more detail on how that's chosen. Here is where I plan, and again, with any business, you want to plan ahead of time. And so what I do is I copy my data, and I will copy it, and I will go to plan, and I will paste it. Okay. Now you'll notice I've actually added a year because what I like to do is, what's my team going to look like next year? And so again, when I paste this, I'll add a year to this, and I'll also add their upcoming skill. So I'll literally do like that. Go to plan, paste it there. I use Excel. Okay, I'm not a big fan of Google Sheets. Okay, and so this is, and then I would just change the age, and as you can see, as I change the age manually, you'll see the value changes as well. Okay. I'm just going to Control Z it so it goes back to before. These are players I was interested in trading for, and I basically use this just as a rough, short plan. Okay, these are players that whenever a team makes a trade, I verify the information using this. Okay, and as you can see, this is what the trade was. Okay. From there, I organize my team. So here I have all my props. I have my starters. I have my bench players and reserves. Okay. I have their skill level. If it's a player I'm thinking of trading, or I may trade, or I'm looking at trading, I also put their values here so I can easily copy and paste it into the trading area. Okay, and again, you can create your own. I don't know if it's good for you to use these because there's so many different things. If the information is you find sometimes is wrong, sometimes you need to just copy down. Okay. So I've listed how many players I have, how many players are going to retire, my training aim, which it used to actually be where you could train an unlimited amount of players. So it was just based on money, but that's changed. Okay. My oldest player, I'm just reminding myself, hey, you know what? You need to trade these two players eventually because they're getting kind of old. Okay. I'm supposed to have 4 props. Yay, I do. I'm supposed to have 3 hooks. I do. I'm supposed to have 4 locks. Ooh, okay. So this is a warning, and especially one of them's really old. Okay. In addition to that, I also have information about who my lowest starter is, which this might not actually be accurate anymore because I notice here I have a player that's 56, but I know I've traded them recently. I don't know who that was. Anyways, I did have a player that was 56, but they're gone. So net worth. As I noted before, net worth, while it's a good indicator, you also need to look at how many players are going to retire. So how much is that net worth going to go down by? Okay. There's other things on this page, but a lot of this is administrative. Okay. This sort of gives you a general idea as to other things like what the stadium name is, what real stadium is it based on, what real city is it from, and then some other administrative stuff. Okay. Finally, the last few pages, these are all the previous championships since the beginning of the simulation. These are the legends, so these are the players on each of those teams, and I plan on populating this eventually as time permits. And then this is all the information that happened in previous seasons. Plus, in addition to that, I also have spreadsheets that you can see the history of your team. Okay, and so what it looked like in previous seasons, although it's not listed here. I can give those to you if you want. Okay. If you have any other questions, let me know. I hope you enjoy running your company, and thanks for watching. Cheers.